Welcome to Mortgage on My Mind, where we take the mystery out of mortgages and make dreams of home ownership a reality. I'm Natalie Salins, a top 1% mortgage broker with 20 years of experience, based right here in sunny Los Angeles. If you've ever wondered about pre-approvals, appraisals, or what loan product is right for you, don't worry, I've got Mortgage on My Mind, so you don't have to. Each week, I'll bring you expert advice, real-life stories, and insider tips to help you navigate California's competitive real estate market with confidence. Whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or just curious about how it all works, this podcast is for you. So let's talk mortgages, demystify the process, and make your real estate goals a reality. Ready to get started? Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Today, we have with us an incredible guest. Joe Tafolla is a renowned industry expert on down payment assistance and a published author in the field. As a preferred speaker for a subsidiary of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Joe has been featured on prominent platforms like Fox News and USA Today for his groundbreaking work. And in 2012, he famously sacrificed his position at Bank of America, which, by the way, I used to work at Bank of America as well, to provide $1,050,000 in mortgage credits to 178 veteran families, which is amazing. He has trained multi-billion-dollar mortgage companies, developed innovative assistance programs like NHF Platinum, and also provided millions in down payment grants that never need to be repaid back, so they're true grants. And his passion, of course, is for helping families achieve home ownership. And, you seem pretty impactful and inspiring, and I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Natalie. That's quite the intro. I appreciate it.
Right? I know. I just didn't feel like we could move past who you are and what you've accomplished. I really felt like we needed to get that out to understand who we're speaking with today. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Sure. So yeah, I'm happy to, kind of jump into it, talk about, best ways to move into a home, especially as a first-time home buyer. We have quite a bit of experience with that. I have been doing this for 22 years now, and it's one of those things that you just kind of find that there are some programs that are better than others. Down payment assistance is always an option for people, and depending on their specific situation, it may be the best option. It really just depends. We have that saying in our industry, when's the best time to buy a house? When you can afford one. And for a lot of people, they end up being able to get into that equity position with that asset much sooner by using down payment assistance and ultimately riding up the appreciation inside of their market. My expertise is going to be limited towards the Washington state space just because that's where my boundaries are for my license. But I have done loans all over the country when I did work for different lenders. But what I found in a lot of situations is the people who try to wait to buy a house because they're saving up end up being priced out of the market down the road, because there's no way that you're going to be able to save at a rate that's going to outpace the appreciation of a house. A lot of people forget when they are buying a house, it's the only type of asset that you only have to put a fractional percent down on in order to get all of the return. You couldn't do that on a Tesla stock. If you come in, you have to own 100% of it to get 100% of the appreciation. For a house, you get to leverage it, and it's a much different position that allows, or more dynamic position that allows for your portfolio to grow in your assets and everything. So,
I always say we have a form that I will send clients called the cost of waiting.
Sure.
It is an actual cost when you wait. And it breaks down, the potential of like, if you get in now, how much will it cost if you wait for a year, just based on appreciation, based on what the new down payment would have to be, based on the higher loan amount, the higher payment, regardless of where rates are. The cost of waiting is always quite substantial.
Yeah. And, the only time, right, that wouldn't be the case is if we're in a depreciating market, right? And then at that point, waiting on the sidelines might make sense. But in my market, in the Seattle space, Puget Sound proper, the people who have waited have lost out, because the idea is, and you try to explain this to first-time buyers, but if you're waiting on the sidelines to jump in for the rates to go down, you're going to end up paying more for the house. And a lot of times what we try to, say is, marry the house, date the rate. You can always renegotiate the rate on the mortgage, but you can't renegotiate the amount you paid for that house. So if you're getting in at a hot time where everybody else is piling in, you have to start getting creative with how you're doing your financing and helping your offer set itself apart in order to not pay through the nose as the market just goes nuts. Now, in a flat market or a declining market, okay, that's a different position, but we haven't really seen a true recession on that for over a decade. And in most areas in the country, we didn't see prices go down. So whoever was waiting these last couple of years, they missed out. And so,
it's even just the people that I've been able to refinance in the past year, right? So like November of 23, rates were in the high 7s, low 8s, even if you remember, like November, December.
Yep.
And this past year in 24, like August, September, my rates were in the low 6s. Mm-hmm. Those people that I was able to get out of that 7.8 to 8%, just 8 months or 9 months later, had $100,000 or 10% in equity more, right? So now I'm refinancing them at 25% equity, 20% equity when they only had 10. I'm getting them out of MI less than a year later. And now their payment is as low as it would have been had they waited. But literally, when you do the numbers, because they didn't wait, they ended up paying in extra mortgage interest. Most of them, like, let's say $600 or $700 more a month, right?
Sure.
Like, all right, so you paid like $8,000 more to buy the house last year. If you were to buy it today, you can see it in the equity. You would pay $120,000.
Correct.
And now you get the same rate.
Yep. But that's really like roughly like $1 million loan amount, right? If you're like $700 on 1% difference on interest rate, 800,000 on the loan amount. Yeah. And, the savings, they do change. And I take that exact same approach with clients. And the ones who are pencil savvy, they're in there and they're doing the numbers, they're crunching it. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense because, not even going into like the tax benefits of home ownership, right? Like, that's out of my expertise. That's out of my wheelhouse. But we all know that there's tax benefits associated with them. And so there's that aspect of it. But then you're exactly right. You're going to pay in some capacity. And if there is little to no risk, then you have the price go up. And that's just the way the market works. So if there's perceived risk, like what happens with the rates? What's the market going to do? Things like that's the best time to buy. If you want to get a good deal on something, less people are shopping because there's fear in the market. You're able to get, kind of push the sellers around. But now that it's starting to warm up a little bit and everybody's getting a little bit eager to get their house on the market, they're sitting on a lot of equity. And it's just a matter of, it's almost like everybody can read the writing on the wall. They know that the rates are going to tick. And there's a lot of talk about that. And, maybe we go into that at a different one. But if they do start to kind of cascade downward, we're going to see a more than 1-to-1 ratio of the prices going up. The prices will outpace the rates going down every time. And that's how we get appreciation.
Exactly. Yeah. And because as we sit still now and wait to see what happens with this, new administration and possible tariffs and what's going to happen with inflation, we do feel, and it's obviously they came out yesterday and said it, but we do feel that rates will most likely hold steady. I'm thinking at least till Q3, Q4 to truly understand what our economy is, how it's going to react, right?
Correct. And if sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Yeah.
Well, if the rates hold steady and the demand keeps up, that's just going to make even for more of a pop once the rates do go down for appreciation. There's just too much in there for people. There's just too much meat on the bone at that point. And, I've heard I call it tinfoil hat theory, right? Stuff that you can't really prove, crystal ball stuff. They're talking about how gas prices are going to be the bellwether for this one. And so this time around, the oil prices are going to be tied to inflation, is going to be tied to interest rates. And so I'm curious to see if that's actually how it's going to play out. But it does seem plausible that could be the route that if we watch gas prices start to go down, it could be just around the corner that we see the rates start to tick as well. And that's what the current administration is touting. Not saying good, bad, or ugly, just that's what they're saying. So
that's what I'm saying. Okay. I mean, normally, like last year, where all of a sudden rates did start coming down before the Fed lowered, rates started, ticking down. We had a great August and September. Again, was able to refi some of the people out of the very high rates that they were in from the year before. I have a feeling we'll see a couple months of that here or there this year.
I think regardless even of what the Fed is saying, something will happen, of course, in the economy that will push it down and then possibly push it even up. So we'll see, we'll just see what happens. It's an interesting that some financial analysts gave a great analogy on how the Fed is approaching this next step. And they said it's like walking into a pitch black room filled with furniture.
Try not to stub your toe.
Well, we have no idea when something's going to hit, but we're walking very slowly, knowing that something is going to happen. Like we will hit something at some point. We just don't know when, and we have to walk very slowly so we don't hurt ourselves, right? So it's like kind of that analogy, which I appreciated. Yeah.
I love it because there's so many levers that are being introduced into this new administration that we just haven't seen pulled. Like, the whole tariff thing. I mean, I don't remember, but I know that 100 years ago or so, like that's what our country operated off of was tariffs. And now they're talking about rolling back to that. Okay, that sounds great. And like, in the end game, I'm sure it's awesome. But in the short game, it makes prices go up for stuff. And that's inflation. And then if inflation goes up, that's going to affect our rates. And like, if anything, it creates more of a case for buying now. So that way you can get your 30-year fixed or your fixed rate. So that way you're locked in. Because the other thing that people don't realize is, and let's just assume that someone's been on the fence since 22, right? They missed out on those super low rates. They started to pop up like, I'm just going to wait for them to come back down. Your rent has gone up to the point where you could have bought, and it would be cheaper now for you to have a home, even with a low down payment, than what you're renting for right now, right? Because you lock in your rents when you buy a house on a fixed rate. Like for the most part, right? Your property taxes might change, but for the most part, your payment is guaranteed. And people don't take that into account with the cost of waiting. And so
exactly. There's, on a rent, any kind of like rent versus buy flyer that you have or can create.
Sure. Yeah.
After 10 years, if you have a 10-year chart, and this is on like a standard $600,000 or $700,000 deal. After 10 years, you've basically spent $500,000 on rent. And after 10 years, if you've owned, you have earned $500,000. So it's like having $500,000 in your pocket extra in equity or having lost $500,000 of your money. So, it almost always pans out to where the loss is the same as the gain in equity.
Correct. Yeah. And it's just, no matter how you pencil it, the trick, right, is not a short-term outlook. If you're looking at like 6 months, 12 months, that doesn't really work for housing. If you're looking at 5 years, 10 years, like it pencils in your favor as a homeowner. And it's just one of those things. And
it's patience. We do say like, you forget, yes, the payment seems high and that's where you live, right? But you forget that you're putting money into an asset. This is an asset. People forget that the house is an actual money-making asset.
Yeah.
And it's your home. It's like you get both. Forget,
I had a client come in this week who was having a hard time understanding just like the fact that he's paying into a mortgage is an investment in and of itself. And he was receiving about $3,000 from VA benefits. And he wanted to take that $3,000 and invest it in some way. And in order to keep his payment where he wanted out of his primary income, I suggested, hey, out of that $3,000 that you're going to invest, take $1,000, put it towards your mortgage, take the other $2,000, diversify, and put it into the market and let it ride out that way. Because this is exactly what you're doing, is you're investing into an asset. And a lot of people don't realize that, yes, your payment goes up, but that's like you saving. That's like you putting that extra money into a
different bank account.
Correct. Yeah.
It's just you're putting it literally into a non-liquid, but it becomes liquid, but a non-liquid bank account. It's still yours. You're just putting it into a different account.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to sell me on it. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your story of advocacy and how in 2012, the one decision you made, it changed so many people's lives.
Well, the idea was, this is right after the bailout and all that other kind of good stuff. And there was just an opportunity where I was able to grind out a loophole at one of the major banks that I worked at. And it was specifically for veterans. We were doing VA streamlines, and my team and I were able to roughly get about $5,000 cash back to these veterans on almost 200 files. And it was great opportunity. Everybody was very happy about it. It was very fulfilling. I did it in a matter of just a couple of months in order to sneak it under the rug, so that way the guys up top couldn't find out about it. But When they did, I was promptly released. They weren't happy about my decision to exploit their loophole, but that's neither here nor there. The idea was to help people because they've served our country, and it's the least we can do. And not everybody feels that way apparently, but it was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the VA loans are like the most incredible loans available out there.
Especially if they have any disability rating, because then they don't have to pay that funding fee. And then it's just hands down like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in LA, now VA has no loan limits. So in LA, you can put 0% down. And like a client of mine who's a VA had the entitlement for it, got a $2.1 million house, 0% down, zero mortgage insurance, incredibly low rate because it always has that, I mean, it's, you can't find that anywhere. It's remarkable what's on it.
It's one of the best benefits the VA offers, especially if you leverage it properly. I've seen more like service members that are millionaires that like never made more than $100,000 because they have like 5 or 6 different houses. They've been in the military for their career, almost 20 years. They're getting ready to retire, and they've got all these little properties that are all rented out to other servicemen. So the houses are kept in good condition, and it's neat to see when people leverage it properly because the banks win so often that when we can get one for the little guys, like it's really fulfilling. Yeah.
What would you say was like the biggest lesson that you learned from doing this?
I would do it again. I don't know. I guess I didn't learn my lesson.
I guess you're still looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about how the NHF Platinum program works.
Sure. So NHF Platinum's been replaced by NHF Sapphire. I believe that Platinum is completely discontinued at this point by the Chenoa program. And they are out of California, if I remember correctly. And what they do is they offer different types of second mortgages or gift funds to you, depending on income, your income limits, and what you're looking to achieve in terms of like how much money you want, everything else for closing costs, just for down payment, that kind of stuff. You can get up to 5% towards whatever it is that you're purchasing that will help you towards your down payment and closing costs, because this is with FHA is 3.5% down, and then you can even get a little extra to help with those closing costs. Downside for these kinds of programs is, there's always 2 sides to the coin. They're getting that money from somewhere, and so they have slightly higher interest rates. And some of them will want you to stay in that loan for a set period of time. Otherwise, you need to repay that second mortgage, or they'll have you do like a silent second. And if you refinance inside of their program, then they'll resubordinate the second mortgage and just kind of leave it in place. But a lot of them, they want you to hold it for 10 years. And
10 years, the second loan?
Yeah. And when you're dealing with appreciation and everything else, it does not all, this is the loan, not the grant. And this is the one that will have like no income limits, things like that. Because unfortunately, what's happening in a lot of our areas is the people who can afford to purchase a house make too much income to qualify for the grant aspect of these DPAs. And so they end up with the loans, which is still better because some of them can be 0% or like, no payment on them kind of deals. But those are going to be better to at least get you into the home, allow you to catch that appreciation, and then you pay back that 0 interest loan 5-7 years down the road or whatever, if you're looking to refinance, because you'll roll it into the equity of your first mortgage. So.
Yeah. And there are like some subordination clauses in there with when you can and how. Yeah, we have. So Movement has something called Movement Boost, where we do a first and a second with FHA, 100% financing. We give you the 3.5% down. We will even give you 5% so that you have 1.5% towards the down payment.
Yeah.
Or the closing costs or whatever. But the second loan for the 3.5 or 5 is at 2% higher than the first. So I lock you at 6%. The second is at 8%.
Sure.
You can pay it off and close it at any time. There are no rules on how long you have to keep it. But you have the mortgage insurance and you have, it just depends on if it's right for you. We do have income limits, but they're reasonable. The main ones that are tough are like, we have a down payment assistance called LIPA and MIPA, which is like low income and moderate income. And even the moderate income for Los Angeles is still fairly low. Like the low income is ridiculous. Yeah, it's the limit is 80,000. And I know that sounds absolutely normal and fine to buy or to earn that.
Middle America.
It's a fantastic salary, actually. And you
Yep.
can easily buy 200, 250, 300 earning that. But in LA, you can't find anything for 250 or 300,000. And that's really all you'll qualify for if you only earn 80. And so that program is like, it's just moot. You know, there's always funds available in it. You're like, the moderate income runs out of funds immediately and the low income has funds all year long. And you're like, can we reallocate these funds? Because it's just not applicable to Los Angeles. And anyway, but I try to use down payment assistance. I am licensed or certified with them to do these loans. You know, we want to offer as much as we can to clients who need it, especially for down payment. You know, we have CalHAFA, which is a great program. It's kind of the same thing. It's a silent second and they get 3%. And that's really for anyone. Then we have, you know, there's a few different programs that we try to use for people when it's available.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you think that like lenders and communities can work together to help, you know, make home ownership more accessible?
Sure. I feel that, you know, people like you and I, just the boots on the ground are really where that can get into the community, because the big banks, big lenders, things like that, their gears are so large, they just walk right over the smaller communities. And really it comes down to, you know, capital market or free market, where people are looking for an underserviced area and they find an opportunity and they grind it out and they create different opportunity inside of it, mostly through education, right? That's really where it comes in. You know, beers and pizza, that's always fun to do a couple times a month. People come, you got some beers, got some pizzas, you talk mortgage, talk real estate. I mean, it's kind of dry lingo. So, you know, pizza and beer helps, but just stuff like that to help get the community involved. Because let's be real, mortgages and real estate are something you have to kind of mentally prepare for to sit down. It's not like you just randomly walk into a restaurant, you're like, oh, they're talking about mortgages, let me sit down and hear more about this. You know, you're going to excuse yourself to the place next door. And, you know, it turns into one of those things that the more education that people have, because this happens, I'm sure it happens to you often as well. People come in all the time and they're like, you know what, I'm not really sure where I'm looking to buy, but probably like 6 months, 12 months, something like that. And then by the end of the conversation, usually only takes about 20 minutes or so to get them up to speed. They go, holy moly, if I can afford to buy right now, let's just do it. And what that's kind of taught me over the years is the more education people have, the more knowledge that they have, the better prepared they feel to make that next step, because there's less fear around there. There's less fear around the what ifs.
There's fear around ignorance, right? That's why it's there. Yeah. The moment you learn and the moment you feel confident in your knowledge, there's no fear in it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The fear is only what you don't know about it. And that's what's so unfortunate. You know, people come and they'll say, I'm sorry for asking the questions. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. And you're like, what are you worried about? Nobody taught
you need to
any of this. I never got taught any of it. I learned it. I didn't even learn it in like all of the, you know, classes and licenses I had to take. You learn it from being in it. You learn it from experiencing it. So it's such an interesting thing that you know, we learn so many things in high school and college and all of it, and nothing prepares you to purchase a home, which is like one of the only things
you just got to jump
America
in
gives you, right? Towards earning and sustaining some sort of retirement, you know, as you get older and everything. So, yeah.
I think the more that people understand to go to the smaller guys like you and I, who actually care about the outcome of their family. You know, we want to make sure that things are done, and we're advising them more than just, here's the rate, here's the fees, let's go. Like, there's a bigger picture. We're talking about an asset that you're going to be holding on to for years. Let's take a step back and understand everything that's going on inside of your plans, so that way we can help you position yourself to go the right way. One thing that stuck with me, I'll never forget it. I'm not going to say which bank it was, but it was a big one in America. And the manager said, it doesn't matter what happened last month, referring to all the deals that rolled and just like blew up at the signing table and everything else. You know, people not getting into homes on time, living in hotels, you know, having their stuff in U-Hauls, you know, the stressful kind of stuff that people go through. And he says, it doesn't matter, because we have something called the bulldozer effect. We are on every corner. He goes, it doesn't matter. There's a line out the door. He goes, just forget about last month and keep going. And it really sold true. Like shortly after that, I left the bank, that they don't care. They really don't. And it comes down to the bottom line. And it breaks my heart when I hear the little old lady saying that she wants to go to the bank around the corner because she's been banking with them for the last 40 years and they're sure to treat her right. It's like,
I think they care about
you're
her.
the people they don't,
Right, exactly. It's unfortunate that they hold all your money for so long, and that's really all they care about. But that's what I tell people when they want to go to a big bank. And if you're the perfect file and you have enough money in that bank where they're going to offer you a crazy low rate because you're a private client of theirs or something, then amazing, go for it. Good luck with the appraisal. Good luck with other things.
Closing on time.
Right? But I always, will say, listen, big banks have way larger priorities than mortgages. Big banks, just a small branch of that institution is worried about mortgages. You're not their priority. The most important thing to them is the money that they hold for you. That's why they're called a depository institution. Your deposits are all that matter. And that's where they spend 80% of their time and energy. When you come to somebody smaller, like an IMB, which is an individual mortgage bank, you get the care of an institution understanding all of the options available, number one, but also that's all we do. 100% of what we do, we are here only to focus on that. You get all of our energy time, so there's a difference in it. It makes everything we do much more important because if we don't do it well, we have no business.
When you think about it like an assembly line, right? If you can focus on one thing and become the expert in that one thing, your product is going to be much better in the end than somebody who's jack of all trades, master of none. And, I make a joke to the clients. I go, I've never opened a checking account. I've never opened done an auto loan for somebody. Like, it's not like I'm running from this checking appointment and then running over and trying to give you a mortgage, trying to give you an auto loan. Like, it's too hard to remember all of the guidelines there. You can't be an expert at any of them if you're pulled that thin. And ultimately, that's what the bank does, right? And
exactly. We always say you only have one head. You can only wear one hat. There's only one head. It's one hat. And you wear it well. People can wear a ton of hats, but not on their one head. Yeah. So, Well, so tell me a little bit about the book that you wrote.
Which one?
I don't know. How many books have you written?
3.
3?
Yeah. We got the one about the Homeownership Simplified. We've got a field guide to realtors' massive success. And that's just more of a how-to book for these new realtors coming in, trying to figure out how to make an impression with clients and how to read them.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
And then just a general buying, this overall, this is FAQs mainly, is what they were. And these were built throughout the years. The realtor book was the most recent one. That was a couple of years ago. And
cool. Which did you enjoy writing more?
The realtor one was kind of fun because I nagged at him a little bit, but the down payment assistant one was much more fulfilling because I was actually giving people a blueprint to how to find the NHF program and what to look out for truthfully on these things, because not all that glitters is gold. And while I am an advocate for down payment assistance, and I do think that it is a great option for quite a few people, it doesn't always make sense just to go for the free money. And it does depend. And so that book was really nice to be able to write, just to give people a little bit of clarity. Yeah.
I do tell people sometimes, listen, as much as we want it to be, money isn't free. Money isn't free. You work for your money. You get, you know what I mean? So if somebody's offering free money, it's because there's something else.
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons of everything,
Yeah, absolutely. You never get there's no free lunch, right? And it's sooner or later you have to pay the piper. And that's really what about zooming out is, the idea of zooming out is all about, because when you set yourself up to enter into your asset at the appropriate space, you make a strong, compelling contract. So that way you don't want your only differentiator to be the highest dollar sign. And, you're going to be much better off with using dynamic lending that will allow you to close rapidly. You'll allow you to waive other contingencies that if you go to certain lenders, it's just too much of a risk. You do that to really help yourself set yourself apart. Now you're saving on your entry point. We run a program on our end, and it's called the Step Down Refinance. And so what we do is we work with a lender that's going to allow us to make the wow offer. It usually helps us save on the top end. So that way, when we're purchasing the house, we're not purchasing it at the exact amount that the second bidder is. We had somebody in West Seattle not too long ago. They got the house for $25,000 less. It was $1 million purchase because of the dynamic situation with the offer, because we wrote something so compelling that we got it. So they saved 25 grand. And then after 6 on-time payments, they qualify for a program, which is a discounted refinance. So that way it makes it very easy for them to say yes, because we pay the vast majority of the APR fees. And the idea is, I call it scraping the bottom of the barrel. And so we'll use the refi lenders after 6 to 12 months to get them the lowest rate that we can possibly find. But we don't go after those lenders on the purchase because it risks so much to the integrity of the transaction. They don't close on time. You lose your earnest money. Yeah. All of the other nightmare scenarios that you just don't want to play with. And
I say it all the time. The lowest rate has the longest line.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good.
Because everyone is standing in it. The lowest rate has the longest line because everybody is standing in it. So go there for your refi when you have time to stand in it and waste. But right now we got to get you in, got to get you closed.
Correct. They have low rates because they don't have as much margin. They don't have as much margin means they can't have the same amount of employees. You're not getting updates the same. You're not following through the same. They're not closing
You're
on
not
time.
spending the same kind of money to make sure that your purchase closes on time. They're just not.
Yeah. In theory, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal until you're in the 11th hour. You're not getting any updates. Everything's in the U-Haul. You're currently in a hotel and your wife is screaming at you.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like my big bank days. When I was at a big bank, it was unbelievably people crying, and you're like, the underwriters weren't calling me back.
They don't care. Yeah, they just, because the underwriters are overwhelmed as well. And, and I don't know if you had the same experiences that I did, but the underwriters were just going through waves of quitting, and they were constantly hiring new people. And so you're dealing with the learning curve of this. And when you have a small team, you're a little powerhouse, you can get stuff done. Your limit is capacity. You can't do as much as the big bank, but who cares? You have your select few that you help out.
Exactly.
There's only so much room on the boat.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah. Good questions.
Oh, good. Yes. Thanks. Your history and your accomplishments are amazing. And it's really been such a pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit. And is there anything that you wanted in particular to bring up or highlight? Or I feel like we got through quite a bit.
I feel like we touched on a lot. I'm happy to go over anything else you might like. But I mean, truthfully, this was a great conversation. I feel like we went over a lot with the down payment assistance. We talked about, the right times to buy. We talked about, the difference between banks and everybody else, and I feel like we did cover a lot, and I don't have much to add unless you'd like me to touch on anything else.
No, I think we got through, all of what I was interested in chatting about as well. It was really, like I said, lovely meeting you again.
Thanks for listening to Mortgage on My Mind. If you're ready to start your mortgage journey or have any questions, I'd love to help. With 20 years of experience, I make the process as simple and stress-free as possible. Check the show notes for my contact info, and don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. Until next time, I'm Natalie Salins, here to help make your real estate dreams a reality.